This is Mac OS Ken.
Recapping Apple earnings. It is Friday, the 29th of October, 2021. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Comet Backup, a fast, flexible backup platform for business. Get a $50 free credit when you use promo code MacOSKen at cometbackup.com. This show is also sponsored by Upstart, fair and fast personal loans. Debt can feel like a long, dark tunnel. Upstart can be the light at the end of that tunnel. Whether it's paying off credit cards, consolidating high-interest debt, or funding personal expenses, over 1 million people have used Upstart to get a simple, fixed monthly payment with a clear payoff date. That's that light at the end I was talking about. Upstart looks at more than just your credit score, factoring in income and current employment. You can check your rate without impacting your credit score in minutes for loans between $1,000 to $50,000, and you can receive funds as fast as 1 business day after accepting your loan. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/macOSKen. UPSTART, that's upstart.com/macOSKen. Don't forget to use my URL to let them know I sent you. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Upstart.com/macOSKen. I'd like to start today with not an apology, but an explanation. And maybe a mea culpa if that's different at all from an apology. I said on Thursday's show that Wall Street was looking for earnings per share for Apple's fourth quarter of 73 cents. Mac OS Ken listeners may have noticed a bit of a question or surprise in my voice when I said that. Still, if you can't trust Barron's, which is where I got that 73-cent expectation, who can you trust? Well, CNBC maybe, or even Yahoo Finance. They both say that the street was looking for earnings per share of $1.24, which is what Apple delivered in its fourth quarter earnings. Apple did, of course, not miss on its own guidance because it offered none. It did miss on Wall Street expectations, though how Wall Street can reasonably have expectations. Yeah, I know, we all have jobs to do. They're trying to do theirs amid unprecedented circumstances, as is Apple. On the earnings call, Apple CEO Tim Cook talked about the year that was. This time last year, lots of uncertainty. While times are still unprecedented, he says he and his are encouraged by progress being made for both people on the planet and Apple as a company. Speaking of which, the company took in revenue of $366 billion in fiscal year 2021. I am no mathematician, but that sounds like over $1 billion a day. Apple execs say it represented 33% annual growth over fiscal year 2020. Apple also hit over 20% growth across all of its categories and across every geographic segment. Can I quickly do a personal aside? This was probably my 60-somethingth Apple earnings call. I've straight up missed a couple due to summertime travels, but I also covered them for another show before I started this one. I mention that because after roughly 60 earnings calls, I feel like I kind of do them differently every time. It's like I forget. Then again, I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,000 episodes of Mac OS Ken, so I guess I can be forgiven for forgetting how 60 of them went. But enough of my numbers, let's look harder at Apple's. Wall Street was looking for revenue of $84.8 billion. Apple delivered $83.4 billion, an increase of 29% year over year and a new September quarter record. This they did despite larger than expected supply constraints, according to Apple CEO Tim Cook. Cook says those constraints cost Apple about $6 billion in revenue last quarter. Said constraints were driven by the global chip shortage and COVID-related manufacturing disruptions. Wall Street estimated iPhone revenue of $41.5 billion. It got $38.9 billion, an increase of 47% year over year, and a September quarter record for the phone. Of course, this year had a week or two of new iPhone sales. Those were pushed to the December quarter last year. Bringing us back to last quarter, Apple CFO Luca Maestri said that iPhone grew double digits in each geographic segment, setting September quarter records in both developed and emerging markets. In the U.S., 451 Research puts customer satisfaction for iPhone at 98%. Wall Street expected Mac revenue of $9.2 billion. It got Mac revenue of $9.2 billion, up 1.5% year over year, and an all-time record for Mac revenue. CFO Maestri says that was driven by strong demand for the M1-powered MacBook Air. The last 5 quarters for the Mac have been the machine's best 5 quarters ever, according to the CFO. And, as keeps being the way, about half the people buying a Mac last quarter were new to the platform. In the U.S., 451 Research puts customer satisfaction for the Mac at 97%. Wall Street was looking for iPad revenue of $7.2 billion. Apple beat that, delivering $8.25 billion, an increase of 21.5%, and another September quarter record. Just like the Mac, CFO Maestri says about half the people buying Apple's tablet last quarter were first-time buyers of the product. And just like the Mac, 451 Research puts customer satisfaction for iPad at 97% in the States. For wearables, home, and accessories, Wall Street wanted $9.3 billion. It only got $8.8 billion, an increase of 11.5% year over year, and, say it with me, another September quarter record. And finally, for services, Wall Street was expecting $17.6 billion. Apple delivered another beat, $18.3 billion, an increase of 25.5% versus the same quarter a year ago. Matching the Mac, the services category set an all-time quarterly record, with shout-outs from CFO Maestri for cloud services, music, video, advertising, Apple Care, and payment services, each of which set all-time records. The App Store set a September quarter record, according to Mr. Maestri. Apple now has over 745 million paid subscriptions across its services platform. That's up over 160 million from this time last year, according to the CFO. The company set quarterly records in every geographic segment with strong double-digit growth across the board, according to CEO Cook. After calling out the new store in the Hunan province in China, the new store in Istanbul, Turkey, and Apple's first for the Bronx, CEO Cook said that all of Apple stores worldwide are now open and have been for 7 weeks. He also expressed his thanks to the folks working those stores and keeping them going. As had been expected, Apple did not offer revenue guidance for the current quarter, though it did talk trends. And here's an ugly one. That $6 billion hit Apple took due to supply constraints last quarter, Apple expects those to be larger this quarter. Larger sounds so much better than worse, doesn't it? Despite the harder squeeze, Apple still expects to achieve very solid year-over-year revenue growth and to set a new revenue record for the December quarter. The company expects revenue for each category to beat revenue for the same quarter a year ago, iPad not included. Revenue for iPad is expected to decline due to supply constraints. Growth for services will decelerate, according to CFO Maestri, though the company does expect growth to remain strong. Finally, Apple's board of directors has declared a cash dividend of 22 cents per share. That'll pay out on the 11th of November to shareholders of record as of close of business on the 8th of November. With that, it was time for questions from financial folk. We'll get to those in a moment, but first a word from Comet Backup. I had a great email from a macOS Ken listener yesterday. He heard my story earlier in the week about losing years of contact info and offered his assistance in retrieving it. I thanked him very much, but explained it was 17 years ago. All the associated devices are long since gone. And yet I still seriously feel that loss. That was just phone numbers and addresses. Imagine if it had been information on your business or information on your clients. There are any number of ways to protect your infrastructure. One of those should be a solid backup solution, which Comet Backup can be. It's encrypted backup software for computers, emails, databases, and servers. Fast and flexible, with Comet, you choose where your data is stored, in your local storage or to any of the leading cloud providers. You can host the servers yourself, or Comet can host them for you. Whether you're running a Mac, Linux, or Windows environment, you have total control over your data. Test drive Comet Backup with a 30-day free trial at cometbackup.com. Plus, you can get a $50 free credit when you sign up with the promo code MacOSKen at cometbackup.com. Start running backups in 15 minutes or less at cometbackup.com. Now let's go to the phones. Shannon Cross of Cross Research wanted to hear about specific supply chain problems and what improvements the company has seen in the current quarter. She also wanted to know which Apple products would be most affected. CEO Cook answered, saying iPhone, iPad, and Mac were all affected by last quarter's constraints. As he mentioned near the top of the call, those constraints were driven by chip shortages and COVID-related issues in Southeast Asia. That second one has improved considerably. The first one has not. That's affecting just about everything Apple makes. Demand is very robust, but by the end of the quarter, constraints will be bigger than the $6 billion they cost Apple in the September quarter. Cross also wanted to know about the percentage of Apple products sold via monthly payments rather than outright. Cook says in the U.S., iPhones are predominantly on monthly plans. Most other Apple gear is an outright buy, though the number of monthly plans is increasing. The indication seems to be that there will be more of that from Apple ahead. Evercore analyst Amit Daryanani wanted to know whether the December quarter will be the peak of the supply chain trouble. Yeah, Cook didn't want to guess about that. While the COVID disruptions to manufacturing are better now than they were a month ago, COVID is hard to predict. As for the chip shortage, the chips that are short are being sought by countless industries, and it's hard to know when that shortage will ease. Morgan Stanley analyst Katie Huberty had a question that recent notes indicate has vexed her for a few weeks. With the supply chain choking iPhone availability, what data points can Apple offer that point to customer demand for iPhone 13? Cook says the company looks at demand in Apple's online store, demand in retail. They look at back orders with carriers. They have a number of data points they use to gauge demand, and they feel good about where demand is right now. Huberty also asked about changes in the App Store. She says she and hers have surveyed 4,000 customers in the US and China, and most of those people don't want to pay developers directly, preferring the security and convenience of the App Store. So how does Apple think about potential changes given customer preference? Cook says Apple will keep the focus on privacy and security with customers, with legislators, and with regulators. They're basically working on hammering those messages. UBS analyst David Vogt got philosophical, or really asked Apple to. Given the current state of wacky in the supply chain, does that whole thing need a rethink? Not really. The pandemic hit, companies cut their orders, assuming demand for goods would fall off. Demand actually increased, and now the supply chain and the companies that employ it are trying to catch up. Cowen and Company analyst Krish Sankar wanted to know what kinds of reaction Apple was getting to app tracking transparency. Specifically, he wanted to hear what Apple had heard from advertisers and how it was affecting Apple's own advertising business. Hey, Krish Sankar, I'm one of the consumers being tracked less. Thanks for asking. Anyway, CEO Cook talked about me and you, saying the feedback from customers has been overwhelmingly positive. Putting that kind of control of consumer data in the hands of consumers is Apple's only motivation around app tracking transparency, so says the CEO. JP Morgan analyst Samik Chatterjee wanted more info on iPhone 13 demand, specifically what is driving it and who's it coming from. Cook says iPhone 13 is still so new, it's hard to speak to that specifically. Last quarter, though, iPhone grew double digits with both people switching from Android and people upgrading from older iPhones. And finally, Raymond James analyst Chris Casso wondered whether sales missed last quarter and this quarter due to supply constraints will be recaptured in the March quarter. And are there categories where, if you miss the holidays, you just miss the sale? Cook says some products bought as gifts will be missed. The ones that aren't bought as gifts will be captured later. What's that you say? You want more? Well, there is a lot more to be had and a couple of great ways to get it. You can stream a replay of the call on Apple's investor site. It is also available as a podcast. Grab them while you can. Apple only leaves the replays and podcasts up for a couple of weeks. Positive as Apple execs were on the call, and despite all of the records for products and services every place on the planet, Apple missed Wall Street expectations on iPhone, on wearables, and technically on the Mac. I know I said it was $9.2 billion versus $9.2 billion, though Apple actually delivered Mac revenue of $9.18 billion versus Wall Street's expectation of $9.23 billion. iPhone was the big one, though. They missed there by close to $3 billion. I would not even begin to guess how shares are going to perform today. I can tell you they got punished in after-hours trading yesterday. Shares were up $3.72 in regular trading to end the day at $152.57. Then came the earnings. Then came the pain. After hours, shares were down over $5. Maybe they'll be tempered by analyst reaction. Maybe folks will buy the dip. That is in the very near future. We'll check back on all of it on Monday. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Upstart. Fair and fast personal loans. Learn more and check your rate at upstart.com/macOSKen. This show is also sponsored by Comet Backup. Get a $50 free credit when you use promo code macOSKen at cometbackup.com. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.